Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. I've really enjoyed having you here. Like I said, if you're new here, we're really excited to have you. We talk about true crime stories and those types of things, so if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and hit the little subscribe button down below and the little bell icon so you can be notified when I upload. I do want to give a quick warning though that the things that we discuss here can get pretty heavy. So if that's something that your mental health cannot handle, then please just go ahead and click off this video and I'll catch you somewhere else, but your mental health is so much more important than a YouTube video ever will be. I am kind of thinking about switching up my uploading schedule, so if you don't see an upload on Tuesday of next week, then you should see it on Thursday of that next week. I haven't completely decided if that's something that I'm going to do or not, so just kind of hang with me while I try to figure out my schedule better. So anyway, let's hop on into the video. Today we're going to be talking about Chris Watts. And I know that this video can really trigger a lot of very strong emotions in some people, so I figured before we got started, we just set a couple of ground rules. I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of conspiracy theories on this case, and if that's something that you want to believe in, I'm not here to tell you you can or can't. I'm just here to say that in this comment section, we are not going to do any of the bickering and fighting that I've seen on some other platforms. People tend to get pretty heated about this case in particular, so if there's going to be bickering, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the comments. Another thing, it's okay to have a difference of opinion while still being able to get your point across, and it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have a conversation and open your mind a little to possibilities that you didn't think would happen without the conversation. So please just remain respectful in the comments. And another thing, and this is huge, there will be no victim shaming of any kind. If there's any victim shaming of Shanann or Bella and Cece, the comment will be deleted and the commenter will be blocked. I will not tolerate any victim shaming of any kind. I don't care what you thought of Shanann. She did not deserve this. Those baby girls did not deserve this, and there is nothing that you can ever say to me that will ever convince me that Shanann deserved what happened to her. She did not deserve it. So just be warned that victim shaming of any kind will be deleted and blocked immediately. We will not have that kind of energy in our lives, so thank you. This is an extremely well looked into case. So many people have looked into it, and that's fine. I wanted to go into a little deeper dive on this case on my platform myself, and so that's why I'm doing this case. Nobody requested it. It was just something that I myself wanted to look into because there were so many people talking about it and there was so much information out there. So I do also want to say that I am not going to hit on everything that is out there when it comes to this case. I'm just going to hit on the murder itself and a couple theories at the end. So if you want to add more, that's what the comment section is for. Please don't get mad at me if I don't hit on a detail that you personally think was important. If you think it's important, then just go ahead and drop it down into the comment section respectfully. There's a way to be respectful and not be hateful, and we're not going to be hateful about this case. So yeah, but like I said, this case was so researched and there's so many strong theories and emotions when it comes to this case. While the case is closed and people are kind of moving on from it, there is something about this case that just never sat quite right with me. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail at the end of this video when it comes to my thoughts about what quite didn't sit right. But there was just something in like my soul and my spirit that just doesn't feel settled. It doesn't feel like this is a shut case, that everything has been figured out and all those things. And I'm sure, well, I know that there's a lot of people that agree with me when it comes to this, that there's just something unfinished when it comes to the Watts family murders. It seems like investigators didn't fully investigate and that there are some missing pieces left to this puzzle. I personally believe that somebody got away with murder, but that's just my own personal opinion. So we'll start with a rundown of the case and just the Watts family in general and their life together and those kinds of things. And like I said, if I miss something that you think is important, by all means, go ahead and put it down in the comment section down below. I'd be happy to have a conversation down there. Just don't be a jerk about it. There's absolutely no reason to be a jerk about this kinds of things. But Chris and Shanann met on Facebook in 2010. Chris sent Shanann a Facebook request, and Shanann figured that she had plenty of Facebook friends, that another one wouldn't hurt, and those were pretty much her own words. She posted their love story on her own Facebook and told the story, and she just figured that she would never meet Chris, but that was not to be. They ended up meeting, and it was during that time that Shanann, who was normally super bubbly and outgoing, kind of got sick and just was losing all of her energy, and she said she was losing a bunch of hair and she couldn't quite figure out what was wrong with her. She would go to multiple doctor's appointments and eventually be diagnosed with lupus. She says that this is when she gave Chris an out. She said that you can leave. I know, no hard feelings, nothing like that. But Chris decided to stay. He wanted to be with Shanann. He wanted to be there with her while she figured this out. And Shanann says that's when she knew that he was the one, that's who she wanted to be with. They would soon tie the knot in Charlotte, North Carolina on November 17th of 2010. And it was pretty quick after this that Chris and Shanann made the decision to move to Frederick, Colorado. And that's where they would welcome their two beautiful baby girls. Bella was born on December 17th of 2003, and Celeste, or Cece as she was lovingly known, was born on July 17th of 2015. And it really seemed like Chris and Shanann wanted to be parents. That was kind of a goal for the both of them, to be parents and start their own family. And Shanann loved those girls. She absolutely doted on them every second of every day. Shanann was very, very active on Facebook. She was very active online on her social medias. And she would frequently post videos and pictures of her beautiful little girls. And I'm not kidding, those girls were absolutely gorgeous babies. And oh, they were beautiful. But Shanann would post every single day. And the majority of her posts would revolve around her family and her family life. Chris was in a lot of those posts along with the girls. They just really seemed like the typical all-American family. They seemed really happy. Chris even started a YouTube channel where he posted one video where he talks about relationship advice and how to be in a relationship, which really strikes me as odd now that we're sitting here several years later looking at what happened. This is a kind of a creepy video. One thing that I do think is worth mentioning is that Chris and Shanann seem to live a little outside of their means. They filed for bankruptcy in June of 2015, stating that their bills were exceeding their monthly income and that they just weren't able to make it anymore. That didn't stop them from just trudging along and figuring things out, and Shanann would start working for a company named Lavelle. Now, Lavelle is a multi-level marketing company or a direct sales company. And again, this is not a place to bash MLMs or anything like that. I don't like them either, but this is not the place for MLM bashing or anything like that. So let's just not do any of that either. But Shanann worked very, very, very hard for this company. And it seemed that she was actually pretty successful at it. She soon reached the rank where they paid for her car, and she was able to buy herself a very nice car with her money that she was making through Lavelle. And I also think that's why she was so active on social media. A lot of these people who are affiliated with MLMs or direct sales companies, they spend a lot of time on social media, kind of posting all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'm pretty sure we all have friends who are in an MLM, and you see their posts pretty frequently on any kinds of social media, not just Facebook, Instagram. I've seen them on TikTok. I've seen them everywhere. So it's not really a surprise that Shanann was super active, but it wasn't just the direct sales that she was posting. It was her family, and I want to make this very, very clear. Shanann loved her family, and you can tell this by the way she would post about them so frequently. I also do think that Shanann's frequent posting gives us a unique look into the case. It lets us look into the family life and really see kind of what was going on during that whole process where Chris was, doing the things that he was doing. And it's just a very interesting look into the Watts family life before the murders happened. In June of 2018, Shanann posted a video of her announcing her pregnancy to Chris. And Chris seemed genuinely excited in this video. I think now when I look at it, it gets a little weird for me. But if you really watch the video and try to remain unbiased, it did seem like Chris was very excited that Shanann was pregnant. I think they had discussed in previous months about trying for another child, and so this was something that they had wanted and had talked about, and this was, this was a part of their plan. But as we often know, everything is not always as it seems. In June of 2018, Chris met a woman named Nicole Kessinger. I'm probably going to refer to her as Nikki for the rest of the videos because there is another Nicole that comes into play later, so I want to keep them separate. But Nikki is someone that Chris met at work. He worked for an oil company in Colorado, and she worked for the same company. I don't think she was directly employed by the oil company that Chris worked for, but she was a contractor that had come in. From what I understand, they saw each other a couple of times at work, and that's when Chris decided to come into Nikki's office and start a conversation. They started emailing back and forth a little bit, where Chris did disclose that he was married, and Nikki seemed, happy about that. But their emails quickly turned to text messages. They were texting each other back and forth. In July of 2018, Shanann had plans to go to North Carolina to spend time with her family for 5 weeks. So she was going to be away from Colorado for 5 weeks, and Chris was going to stay back and work. This is when Nikki and Chris's relationship became physical. During the time that Shanann was away, Chris would go out on dates with Nikki. They went to a museum together. They even camped out at the sand dunes together. There's several videos of them, boarding down the sand dunes and stuff like that. There's several voicemails and stuff like that, videos that they had taken together, pictures that they had taken together while they were spending time together while Shanann was in North Carolina. This is when Chris stopped answering the phone quite as often as he would have before Nikki entered his life. Shanann could immediately tell that something was very, very wrong here, and so she began texting him and kind of calling him out on his behavior. She was also texting her friends talking about how Chris was acting strange during this and how it was very, very weird because before she had left to North Carolina, they had been all over each other. They couldn't get enough of each other, and then she left, and it was like he ghosted her. There was just hardly any communication whatsoever, and he always had an excuse for why he hadn't called or why he hadn't answered, and she was just kind of getting fed up with this, and this becomes very apparent in her text messages towards her friends. One of the text messages, she even says to a friend that the only thing she can think of that could be wrong is another woman, but she doesn't think that Chris has it in him. But Shanann's sixth sense was definitely heightened, and she knew that something was wrong. The very last week of their vacation, Chris flew out to North Carolina to spend that last week with them there. They spent time at the beach, they spent time with their family, but Shanann could still tell that there was something very off with Chris, that he was not being as emotionally affectionate with her, he wasn't being as affectionate with her, intimate with her. There was just something really, really wrong in their relationship, and Shanann couldn't figure it out because things had been so great right before she went to North Carolina, and then like a flip of the switch, everything's different, and she was confused, and I can understand why. Who wouldn't be confused when things are great, when you leave somewhere and then within days things are completely different? I would be confused too. She had every right to be confused and wondering what was wrong. And it seems like she tried getting it out of Chris. She was trying to have conversations with him, but he would just shut her off and not talk to her. Shanann even bought books to help and try to save their marriage, and Chris just kind of threw them away like they were nothing. I don't think he cared anymore. I don't think he cared for Shanann, Bella, and Cece after he met Nicole. Finally, Chris did talk to Shanann a little bit, and he said things like he was afraid of having a third child, that he wasn't sure he wanted to have a third child anymore, and this really, caught Shanann off guard because they had literally planned having a third child. They had discussed this, they had talked about it together, and he had said he wanted a third child. She had said she wanted a third child. And so for him to just kind of come out of nowhere and say, no, I don't want any more kids, it was very strange. On top of that, there had been a little bit of tension in between Chris's family and Shanann while she had been in North Carolina. There was some kind of incident with ice cream where Chris's mother had some ice cream with nuts in it, and Cece was allergic to these nuts, pretty severely allergic to these nuts, and wasn't able to be around them. And allegedly, Chris's family knew about this allergy but decided to have the nuts anyway, and this really made Shanann angry. As I can understand, as a mother myself, if someone knew that my child had an allergy and they brought those things around them anyway, I would be upset about that too. And this was really starting to cause some friction in between Shanann and Chris. At the beginning of August in 2018, it was time for them to head back to Colorado, but as soon as they got back to Colorado, Shanann had to pack right back up and fly to Arizona for a business trip. It was during this weekend that things just kind of really hit the fan. On August 11th of 2018, Chris told Shanann that he was going to go to a baseball game with a couple of his coworkers, and so he was going to hire a babysitter to come watch Bella and Cece. But the truth was is he was going on a date with Nicole. Usually when he went on these dates, he would have gift cards that were given to him by his company, by the people he worked for. And that's how he would pay for the dates that he and Nikki went on. But on this particular evening, he didn't have any more gift cards that he could use for the date. So he used the debit card that was connected to Chris's and Shanann's joint account. This was a $60 charge, and it pinged on Shanann's phone. She got the notification of the charge, and she remembers thinking that that was way too much for a single meal and a beer or two for Chris. So her and her friends decided to hop online and look at the menu at the restaurant that he had said he had gone to, and they started looking at prices, and they just couldn't come up with any way that what he had ordered for him himself alone was $60. And I think this is when Shanann really started thinking that Chris was cheating on her, that he had found somebody else. Shanann didn't openly confront him while she was still away. She was still trying to reconnect with him and trying to bridge that gap where the communication had lapsed, and she was trying to find a way to talk to him and get him to open up so that they could really repair their marriage. She was openly telling him that she loved him. She was thanking him for staying with the girls so she could go to work. She was really, really trying to make this marriage work, and it's really sad to me that what happened next happened. On August 13th in 2018, Shanann's best friend, Nicole Atkinson, and I'm going to call her Nicole and Chris's mistress, Nikki, just so we don't get confused. But Nicole Atkinson dropped Shanann off at her home about 2 in the morning, 1:45, 2 in the morning. She watched Shanann walk into her house, and that was that. Now, Nicole did know that Shanann had a doctor's appointment at 9 o'clock the next morning. She had been very worried about Shanann all weekend long because Shanann hadn't been eating, she hadn't been drinking the way she needed to. So everyone was pretty worried about her, and so she immediately, when she woke up in the morning, she immediately texted Shanann and said, "Hey, just wanted to make sure you're okay." And Shanann didn't reach back out. Now, this is really, really weird because Shanann was literally glued to her phone. Her job required her to be next to her phone at basically all times, and so for Shanann to not respond was extremely weird. Nicole immediately started reaching out to all of their other friends, seeing if anyone had seen or heard from Shanann, but nobody had heard anything. And that's when she called Chris, and Chris said that Shanann had planned to take the girls on a play date to a friend's house, but that was kind of it. Nicole didn't seem to buy this though, and so she decided to go to Chris and Shanann's house, and that's when she looked into their garage and saw Shanann's car with the two girls' car seats in them. She called police and asked them to come do a wellness check. Police arrived and started looking around the home, trying to look for signs of life, banging on the doors, asking for people to respond inside the house, but there was absolutely nothing. The house was just quiet. Eventually, Chris shows up and he goes into the house through the garage, and it takes him a couple of minutes to get from the garage to the front door to let police officers and Nicole in, which I find kind of strange because it should have been a really simple run through the house, open the door, and let the police officer in, but I think he was trying to make sure that there was no evidence laying anywhere that the police officer could see. When police finally did make entrance into the house, Nicole and her son came in as well, and they started looking around the house looking for clues. The girls' blankets were gone, but nothing was packed. It didn't look like Shanann was planning to be gone for an extended period of time or anything like that. It looked like pretty normal. But the thing was, Shanann's phone was there, and so was her wedding ring. But the girls' blankets that they took everywhere were gone. So I think immediately people really started wondering what exactly was going on. Chris told police officers that they had had an emotional conversation that morning, and that Chris had told her, or they had both kind of mutually decided that they were going to split up and sell the house. But the search for Shanann, Bella, and Celeste and Cece started immediately. People started passing out flyers, going door to door, looking for anyone who had seen anything, but there was literally no evidence anywhere. The day after the girls went missing, Chris went on local news station pleading for Shanann's safe and the girls' safe return. But just something, I don't know if any of you watched it while it was happening, but something just seemed really, really off about that interview. It was almost like he was smirking the entire time the interview was going on. It didn't take long for FBI to get involved, and when FBI did get involved, it was on the third day that they were missing that they asked Chris to take a polygraph test. Chris agreed to this, and he was lying during the entire polygraph test. He was asked if he knew anything about Shanann's disappearance, if he knew what had happened to Shanann, if he knew where she was, and he was lying during this whole thing, and he got called out. The interview lasted for about 7 hours, and finally, Chris asked if he could speak to his father. After speaking with his father, Chris did confess to murdering Shanann, but he told investigators that it was after Shanann had murdered the girls. Now, I personally think the reason he said this was because the investigators had been asking him questions like, did Shanann do something to the girls? What happened? And I think that if he said that Shanann had been the one to murder the girls, it wouldn't be as bad than if he had murdered Shanann because of it. Chris was then arrested for murder and held in the county jail. During the confession, Chris did admit to having an affair with Nikki, but he said that Nikki had nothing to do with it. It had been him on his own, and that was that. During the interrogation, he also showed investigators where he had buried Shanann, Bella, and Cece, and I think this is the most heart-wrenching part for me is Shanann had been buried in a very shallow grave at a work site that he was working at. It was called Survey 319, I believe. She had been buried in a very shallow grave, and he had put Bella and Celeste in the oil tanks. And getting them out was an extremely difficult process, and the hole that he had put the girls in was only 6 inches wide. It wasn't very big, and so absolutely gruesome what he did to those girls. Eventually, Chris would plead guilty to the first-degree murder of Shanann, also the murder of minors children under the age of 12, also as a person of trust. So he was a person who should have been trusted, and then he was also charged with unlawful termination of a pregnancy. He pled guilty to this and was sentenced to life in prison. So you would think that this would be case closed and that's the end of it. Chris murdered his family and that's the end of it. And while I do think 100%, and I will always believe that Chris murdered his family, I truly, in my own opinion, do not think he did it alone. I do not think that he was the only one there that night, and I don't think that he was the only one at the work site that he was at. All of these theories involve Nicole Kessinger. I just don't believe a word she says. There are so many strange things that police found in her phone that she did not want to give up either. She was not really working with police. She made it look like she was working with police, but really she was fighting them on every end. She didn't want to give up her phone. She didn't want to do it, she was Googling things like, if I delete text messages, will police be able to find them? Why would you be deleting text messages if you're completely innocent? She was looking up Amber Fry, who was Scott Peterson's mistress, and if people hated her, what her net worth was, all these kinds of things. But the thing that makes this the weirdest is that Nikki was searching for Shanann before she met Chris, before she started working for the company. She was searching up Shanann in 2017, before she had started working for the company that Chris was also working for, which I just find really strange. Why would she be looking for Shanann before she had even met any of them? There are some people who think that it was a typo and that she was actually looking for up Shanann after the murders happened in 2018, but I don't know. I don't know how. The rest of it just doesn't make sense either. So even if you take away the fact that she was searching up Shanann before the murders had even happened, before she had even met Chris, it still doesn't make any sense to me. Nikki was also actively searching up or looking up Shanann on Facebook while she was having her affair with Chris. She would also send Chris text messages when he didn't respond to her, saying like, why aren't you responding to me? Are you with her? And she tells investigators that Chris had told her that they were getting a divorce. But anyone who looked at Shanann's Facebook page could obviously tell that they were not anywhere near getting a divorce, that they were still together, very, very much together. And so if Nikki was looking at Shanann's profile while she was having her affair with Chris. There's no way that she would think that Chris was getting a divorce. This doesn't make sense to me at all, that she told investigators that she was convinced they were getting a divorce, it was over, and that was the end of their relationship. Also, while Chris was away in North Carolina with his family, Nicole was looking at wedding dresses online for about 4 hours. Her search history through this whole thing makes absolutely no sense to me. She also told investigators that when Chris went to North Carolina, she had told him to, hey, work on your marriage with Shanann, you guys have something beautiful, try to work this out, be a family, all those things. But it doesn't make sense to me that she would tell Chris that he was supposed to go work on his marriage with Shanann and then go home and look for wedding dresses and continually search for Shanann and keep texting Chris while he was gone seeing his family. I think if you were the other woman, you would want her to, and you were wanting him to work it out, you would leave him alone, block his number, forget about it. And on another note, there was, the morning of the murders, there was surveillance footage taken from the neighbor's house, the Chris Watts' neighbor's house. They saw Chris backing his truck up to the garage and loading stuff into his pickup. A lot of people have really looked deep into this surveillance footage, and many people believe that they see Nikki there. I'm not sure if I'm convinced on this part, but the thing that really made me wonder about all of this is that a few months after Chris was sentenced to life in prison, the investigators that were on the case went to prison to go have an in-depth interview with Chris. In this interview, Chris gives a very detailed description of what he did that night, and he talks very vividly about what happened. When he talks about getting to the site that he buried Shanann and dumped Bella and Celeste, he always says we. He never says I. He says we took a shovel. We did this, we did that. And that to me seems very, very strange. If he was out there by himself, wouldn't he just say I? You know, it's just little things like that that really, really make me wonder if maybe he didn't work alone. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Do you think that Chris worked alone and that Nikki had nothing to do with this? Do you think that she did have something to do with it? These are all, when it comes to Nikki, it's all my own personal opinion. I don't have any evidence. I don't have any proof. And I don't mean any of this to be harmful to anybody. I mean this with all due respect. I do think these cases need to be talked about so that they don't happen anymore. So I don't ever want anyone to think that I'm trying to be disrespectful when I talk about these things. But there is just something in my soul that does not sit right in this case. I do not think that we know the full story. I do not think that everything is out there that should be out there. So I would really, really love to know your thoughts on it down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about this case. And remember to please be respectful. Shanann was a victim, and she did not deserve what happened to her. Nobody would ever deserve that. Shanann was driven and strong, and just because she was driven and strong does not make her a bad person that deserved this. She was a confident woman. She knew what she wanted, and that was that. There is no more to the story. She did not deserve this. We need to stop demonizing women who are confident and strong and know what they want, and maybe just accept them for who they are. Shanann was beautiful, and she had a beautiful life ahead of her that was cut way too short. And Bella and Cece, they deserve so much better than this, and they had beautiful lives that they should have been able to live. But like I said, leave your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this. Again, if you want to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell notification icon so you can be notified when I upload. Again, I am sending you so much peace and love.